Day 4. Fun day at sea. My goodness, the last day. I was so happy not to have a destination to go to. These 7-day cruises are perfect because you usually get 3 full days at sea, though 2 on the 5 days are a good palate cleanser as well. I love it when it's nearing the end and you're actually ready to return home. It definitely accomplished everything I set out to do and experience on this cruise, and just how often can we say that in life? So maybe that was another reason I was okay with returning, and boy did I sleep in. I didn't find myself up on the Lido for breakfast until 10:30 a.m. I am such a night owl, and I indulged in forbidden cereal once again. I just couldn't get enough of my childhood favorites. It's not like I was going to purchase a big bag once back home. I struck a crazy photo of this alien spacecraft just hovering over the water. Oh, that's just a reflection. This day at sea was an opportunity just to fully enjoy this former Destiny-class ship to its fullest, but also to fulfill some of the check marks I still hadn't checked off, like the ropes course, which is not recorded. Fair warning, you must have closed-toed shoes, and you can't have anything heavy in your pockets, so I had to leave my cell phone in my stateroom. After is when I tried my best to find the most comprehensive wraparound promenade experience I could. I first tried as far around Panorama Deck as I could. The section where the slides and Carnival Waterworks meet is not good because it's slippery and there are a lot of especially kids around, so talk about a no-go. The jogging track is supposed to fulfill this endeavor, but you know how many times it takes to walk a full mile on the jogging track? 6.3 laps, which is crazy because it's about 836 feet or 255 meters long. And that's still over 6 laps. Going back and forth one section of the lobby deck promenade is viable, but I came to find the least awkward option is around Panorama Deck, just with the end point being right in front of the funnel and midship staircase. I took a moment to observe the stern wake. The thing that sucks about the short, essentially 160-mile by-sea journey back from Ensenada to Long Beach is that it would take the Radiance probably about 7 hours. Just 7 hours to return back to Long Beach at her top speed of 22.5 knots or 26 miles per hour from Ensenada. And the itinerary calls her to leave Ensenada at 5 p.m. Wednesday and then arrive in Long Beach between 5 to 8 a.m. Friday, which is something like 26 hours. There were times I was sure that we were anchored in place. Anyway, at the stern, I caught another glimpse of her former days. Still etched in white between Promenade and Atlantic Deck was the name Carnival Victory. What a touching experience to see yet another glimpse of her past self. Even after all that sugary whole grain cereal and oatmeal, I ventured down to the Sunrise restaurant at about 11:30 a.m. for brunch. The couple at the table next to me waited as long as I did. We're talking 40 minutes. Was it worth it? Especially without an unobstructed ocean view and a very stuffy enclosed space. At least I had Ship of Fools to catch up on and a polite conversational couple beside me. The salmon was giving cunard, and so was the hash browns, and elegantly fruit-laden yogurt. The husband beside me even commented on how beautifully it was just kind of strewn about. They were very fresh fruits indeed, and I did get a sizable amount of pages of this very dense book completed. Another important thing on my list was the $7 milkshake from Java Blue Cafe on Atlantic Deck overlooking the atrium with ample whipped cream that I consumed on the peaceful and serene lobby deck promenade. I'd probably purchase it one more time. The whipped cream was very thick and the ice cream was very good, although it was a little thin, even though it was $4 on the Miracle back in 2021, though that was a very and incomparably different time and circumstance in world history, unless inflation really has gone up that much in 4 years. What a scary thought. I also got another good chunk of Ship of Fools completed during this very peaceful time on the original promenade. Even though it's not wraparound, we just don't see this kind of deck on ships anymore, I feel. I think it's real teak. And so to spend the amount of time I did truly immersed in the shipboard experience the characters in 1932 era Ship of Fools were having was very special. At close to 4 p.m., I decided to indulge in some $2.50 each oysters at the Seafood Shack, and they were so succulent and amazing, and I kept the shells as souvenirs. At about 5 p.m., I completed my digital disembarkation process prompted to me on the Carnival Hub app that I'll talk more about in the Day 5 section of this series, or this same video we'll see. This day also, I did it. I spent the $52 upcharge and went to Steakhouse 555. I dressed up in a semi-formal, kind of but still toned down Joseph Farkas fantasy class kind of a way, if that makes sense to you. So this is the 80s attitude I've been missing out on. I'm very proud of that unique outfit I curated. When they asked if I had any allergies, I said yes, but not tonight. And the upcharge was worth it. The decor, atmosphere, elevated food experience, and the very unique view I got of the becoming sunset was worth the $52 upcharge. They gave us all complimentary mini Angus burgers, which was the first course. This was the time I had the second Moscato I discussed earlier. The layered French-style dinner roll was to die for, and I wish I had 5 more of them. I ordered 2 hors d'oeuvres, including the lobster bisque. Very different than what I'm used to. I'm used to very creamy lobster bisque. This one was lighter and more liquidy, and I've never had it so good. My favorite dish of the entire trip and the best lobster bisque I've ever had. There appear to be 5 different variations of lobster bisque, and I believe this one was more of a Cajun or Asian style. I also had equally as succulent stuffed mushrooms. That was my second hors d'oeuvre. And for the entree, it was surf and turf with mashed potatoes and a side of onion rings that I ordered separately. Surprisingly, the entree was the least impressive out of everything else. The lobster was cooked to perfection, and I unapologetically indulged in the albeit very plain melted butter, and the medium cooked steak was just a tad dry. Onion rings were simply breaded without much any flavor, but the texture and crunch were perfect otherwise. And for the dessert, the apple tart with authentic French vanilla ice cream on top. Yeah, it was pretty close to as good as it sounded and looked, though still a tad bit plain and not as French pastry crispy as I expected. That evening was the Rock Through the Ages show at the Liquid Lounge, and it was amazing. It was truly a quality stage performance with impressive production value. I thought the reconfigured stunting of the lounge was a gimmicky way to make adding staterooms a PR way of stating that they just wanted to cut down cost on maintenance and drive up revenue. But speaking of performances, I can see how shows like this benefited from being able to open up the space for unique event performances like this. So fair, Carnival, fair. Because of how my stomach was feeling after all that forbidden indulgent food at Steakhouse 555, at the 8:30 p.m. midnight buffet, I had a gut-healthy salad. And that's all I could handle. Except that was followed later on by the equivalent of a full pizza at the pizzeria closer to midnight. So easy come, easy go. I would pay for it the next few days. I was confident about and okay with. It was fine. The pizza on Carnival is just that good. Oh, and some fries, a chicken nugget, and some really, really sad so-called clam chowder. No offense. The pizza was amazing though, and the staff even more brilliant. Oh yeah, according to my iPhone's picture location technology, at 11:24 p.m. we were paralleling San Diego. For some further context, we also started to pick up speed at this time, going from 7.8 knots to 8 knots. You could feel the party's over mood in the air. The crew were hosing down everything on the outer decks. I did my classic last evening routine of going up and down the scenic atrium elevators at least 20 times. How much longer are we going to get to enjoy full height atriums like this with skylight on future ships? I packed almost everything and went to bed with melancholy, but very, very satisfied. Day 5. Disembarkation. The day before, close to evening time, at least that's when I discovered the notification, the Carnival Hub app prompts you to make required express Disembarkation. If you want them to handle your luggage, keep a lookout for the earliest quote-unquote digital debark, because by the time I secured my disembarkation plans, that option wasn't even available any longer. I would have to handle my own luggage. Perfectly fine, it's what I planned, but be early as there is a deadline and maybe even a limited capacity. I chose the latest disembarkation time I could, between 7:50 and 8:10 a.m. You have to be off no later than 9:30 a.m. according to the app. Jumped out of my bed as early as I could to witness the docking process. Seeing the Queen Mary lit up was absolutely magical, even with the twisted red glow of the Dark Harbor feast maze blistering through the portholes in her lower isolation ward cruiser stern. By the time this video is posted, I will have already attended Dark Harbor for the first time, might I add, so if you'd like to see my review from a Queen Mary enthusiast who's studied Dark Harbor more than he'd like to admit, the link is in the description below. Those bow and stern thrusters were really moving, and you could really feel the vibrations being so close to the port. You could also really feel the kind of uncomfortable melancholy of 5 a.m. Monday morning in a major city, and a major port city at that. Everyone's collective conscience, knowing they had to wake up soon to go to work, and those already at work in the cold seafaring industrial docks, and our collective conscience aboard, knowing we would have to leave the ship soon. But the Queen Mary makes everything better. Oh yeah, at about 7:10 a.m., someone got arrested and escorted off the ship. I don't know, and probably shouldn't know, what that was all about, but what a moment to bear witness to, and from my balcony, as I left it forever. The main dining rooms, the Lido Marketplace, and shockingly Shaq's Hot Chicken are the 3 spots open for breakfast the last morning, and I really indulged, like most others, in the last meal, as well as the last, though limited, experience of the upper decks, striving to snag a seat overlooking the Queen Mary. Though views overlooking the coast on the port side are also just as breathtaking, especially in those early marine-layered morning hours. And seriously, unless you have an early flight or ride you have to catch, it's best to indulge in as much of the buffet and soak in the last minutes of the shipboard experience as you can. It was close to 9 a.m. when I finally made my last rendezvous down the scenic atrium elevators you just don't get on modern cruise ships. It was a pretty easy disembarkation process, and maybe being one of the last to disembark helped. I did linger on the lobby deck promenade and then the gangway a little longer, listening to a no doubt retired couple exclaiming how they would see him on the Carnival Panorama the next day. Wow, could you imagine a back-to-back cruise like that? I wonder what inspired them to take a 4-day and then a 7-day right after. There were 2 slow older people walking in front of me, and I think the group behind me thought I was the one walking slowly because I kept being tailgated, and I mean tailgated. By the time we reached the bottom of the indoor gangplank, they left and my upper luggage fell and I had to readjust it, prompting everybody to rush past me. It felt personal. It was one of those anomalies of a moment where you feel you were blamed and collectively for something you didn't do, and I just wanted to vent my frustration about it. Has anything like that ever happened to you before? But it wasn't going to ruin my entire trip. I met my godbrother who picked me up by the Queen Mary entrance, where the Dark Harbor preparation tuned in my mind for that October 8th experience coming up. I did have a lot of reorientation on land to deal with after all. It was also sprinkling quite a bit, which for me was very refreshing, and it helped that I was wearing contact lenses that day. And what a refreshing change to see that beautiful Art Deco ocean liner contrasting the once considered mega cruise ship of its era I was just on. I would have loved to stay aboard the Queen Mary for a few hours and watch the Radiance depart later that day before heading to work that evening, but life has its parameters and you need to appreciate the privileges you have at the moment. For a good week after, I still felt the waviness of being aboard the ship in my equilibrium, and it was a magical experience I tried to hold on to for as long as I could. Final thoughts. It continues to amaze me how much more cramped modern cruise ships, twice the size of the Radiance by the way, feel compared to the so-called dated, mid-level, smaller ones, quote unquote. For the cramped reconfigurations they implemented mostly in the atrium areas on this ship in particular, the lines for food were never crazy long, booking and securing dining reservations were surprisingly quick, simple, and easy, Wi-Fi was stellar fast, TV stations were in their correct aspect ratio, which as a filmmaker I really appreciated, which they absolutely were not aboard the Miracle back in 2021. The crew was crazy friendly and down to earth and polite in a way I didn't quite experience aboard the Discovery Princess back in 2023, and the uniquely stacked stadium-style Lido pool area and lack of a wraparound promenade did not hinder the charm and magic of this cool and quirky 90s carnival, originally maximalist Las Vegas-y Joseph Farkas-inspired design and layout. And it did fulfill that childhood dream of experiencing this once cool, new, latest, greatest, once cutting-edge original class of cruise ship that I had never seen or experienced before. So for a legendary, though heavily renovated, for better and for worse, Destiny-class Carnival fun ship to grace the West Coast was an absolute gift to me, and I'm happy she and the rest of her controversial sisters are able to stay with us just a little bit longer and bring a certain nostalgic charm to everyone who boards them. While the Spirit class remains some of my favorite cruise ships of all time, certainly in design layout, I would readily sail the Radiance again. It's affordable travel that goes beyond the expectation, in my opinion. Happy sailing, subscribe to the channel, and have a wonderful day.